Wow, that was a lot.
It was.
Well, I'm still taking it in. I started jotting notes as much as I could, but there's just so much to take in that we thought it was absolutely perfect opportunity for us to invite some industry analysts and industry experts here to Channel One to talk to all of you about what they thought of Jürgen's keynote. So we've got several great people here joining us. We're really excited about this. What I find most interesting is this opportunity as we start to plan for the upcoming executive Q&A. Jürgen mentioned it as well. We have the upcoming executive Q&A coming up. It's a great opportunity to hear from others what they think of the keynote and maybe put some of those ideas forward and everything like that. And we are going to be joined here in just a moment by Stefan Peach from DSAG. He's the executive board member of DSAG and head of business applications at Halfa. We have Jeff Scott, chief executive officer of ASUG. Also Ann Petero, she is an SAP mentor and a digital business developer, as well as Jeffrey Hammond, vice president. He is with a principal analyst with Forrester, dealing with a lot of CIOs on technology in general. So I think we have a fantastic panel that will be joining us in just a minute, giving some of their thoughts, some of their ideas. I've got a ton of notes here. I'm hoping to get some really great insights out of them. And hopefully that'll help all of you kind of think through some of your own thoughts and maybe have your questions ready for the live Q&A with Jürgen as well as with Thomas Saueressig.
Yep, starting at 6:10.
6:10.
Yep.
All right, so why don't we see if our guests are online already with us? Up and here they are. There we go. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello there, Craig.
All right.
Good to be here.
Hello, thank you.
All right. Fantastic to have you guys with us. We just finished Jürgen's keynote. I know that you guys have a lot of thoughts around the keynote yourselves. And what I wanted to do is kind of go into I have a few different questions for different ones of you. I've been taking a lot of notes, and I'd really love to get your ideas, your thoughts, your feedback. And maybe this is stuff that could help our audience in general prepare themselves and get their own questions together for the live Q&A that's coming up here at 6:10.
6:10.
All right, so without further ado, how about we just kick this off, and I want to jump right into the questions to make sure we have as much time as possible to answer them. And I have my first question goes to you, Jeff. Jeff, as CEO of ASUG and someone who interacts with so many SAP customers all over the world, I'm sure that you're hearing a lot of different things from different customers as things are evolving and things are changing. And Jürgen was talking a lot in his keynote about the personas and everything like that. And I was wondering, what's your take on all of that?
Well, Craig, first and foremost, welcome and thank you for having me here from Chicago, Illinois today. You know, I love the conversation about personas because it really connects to the real people doing all this incredibly important work behind the scenes every day. And so whether you happen to be a digitally native developer, you're a user experience engineer, you're an application developer, the discussion about that Jürgen had about how all these different technologies that SAP is developing, how they fit into the job you're doing, I think is really critically important. And one of the things I'm looking forward to over the next few days is how I can take my job role, whatever that might be. I might be a data scientist again. I mean, there's lots of them. And how do I take all of this important technology and apply it? I think is critically important. And there really was one job role that I think is emerging that I would love to hear us talk more about. And that's really the everyday end user of SAP technology, if you will, the citizen developer, the real end user of the tools. How do we bring them into this new dialogue? How do we give them the power and the opportunity to use and access all of this great SAP technology? For me, that's really going to be the next generation, the next frontier, if you will, of how we're going to think about enabling the real power of this SAP enterprise technology suite. And so for me, and I think for DSAG as well, this is really a great opportunity to think through how we maybe bring down those walls of IT a little bit, enable our end users to understand what they're doing a little bit more, how they can put all of this technology and data to work in their day-to-day jobs, and really help drive even more value for their enterprise applications and what they need to do and the business outcomes that they're driving. So that's really, I think, what brings me a tremendous amount of energy and enthusiasm for what Jürgen was talking about during his keynote.
That is absolutely fantastic to hear, and I couldn't agree more. It's going to be the combined efforts of SAP and our user groups to really drive this forward. So that's really exciting to hear you guys are excited as well. Which takes me to my next question to Stefan. You're also absolutely no stranger to SAP customers in your role there with DSAG. How are you seeing this overall approach from SAP to the personas?
Yeah, so first, thanks for having me here from Freiburg, Germany. I actually like the persona approach because it reflects the reality. There is not this one developer out there, but there are many different personas, and it's good to see SAP addressing their different needs. And I mean, if you ask me what excited me today, let me highlight two aspects. 2 months ago, during DSAG's annual conference, Jürgen and I talked about the lively discussion in the developer community about the free tier. And I'm fully with the developers. Cloud native development requires cloud native pricing. And this includes trials that are not limited in time and growth opportunities that allow business success and related cloud costs going hand in hand. So I would have preferred to see the general availability of a free tier here at TechEd, but at least I'm truly happy about the commitment that we will definitely have this in 2021. And as a second aspect, I really appreciate that Jürgen put the spot on event-driven architecture. Enterprise messaging and APIs are a mandatory prerequisite to decouple applications. They allow that I can use an extension on the SAP Cloud Platform and react to a business event in the underlying backend system. Without having that, the extension would have to query or poll the system all the time, which wouldn't make sense at all. And I liked even more that this is not only available for the latest and greatest S/4HANA release, but for SAP ECC as well. That is the reality of many customers and DSAG members I'm talking to. And this is so important for two reasons. So first, it helps ECC customers on their way to a hybrid landscape by using the SAP Cloud Platform to build their own extensions. And second, it ensures investment security, as customers can continue using their extensions when they move from ECC to S4. So now it is important that SAP provides enough relevant events, hopefully in the API Business Hub, as the one-stop shop for all personas with an integration or with an extension focus.
On that integration, as you kind of keyed this up in my mind here, from this integration perspective that you just mentioned here with the API Business Hub and everything, what's your opinion, Stefan, about SAP's integration strategy?
So integration is key. I, as a customer, I expect that I can easily integrate SAP's solution portfolio out of the box. Unfortunately, I assume that most TechEd attendees would confirm that plug-and-play integration among the portfolio from SAP is, let's say, not always the case. SAP was strong on integration and must become it again. And herein, the domain model alignment plays an essential role. And it's truly good to see SAP keeps on going with the domain model alignment that demonstrates progress.
All right. I have a feeling, Stefan, that this domain model is going to be a massive topic as we continue forward. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. So let's take a kind of a little turn here, and I'll be looking towards you, Jeffrey. As an industry analyst at Forrester, I'm sure your mind is a swirl of different thoughts and ideas and everything as you're processing through all of the things that you've been hearing. What were some of the highlights for you, the areas that you think need some extra attention?
Hey, Craig. Hello from sunny South Carolina. We're down here on the farm now. I come at this from a little bit of a different perspective because most of my conversations with developers and with CIOs are about how they integrate with their SAP workloads, connect them to the custom applications that they build, as opposed to just about SAP's ecosystem itself. But, you know, I found a lot to like in Jürgen's speech, similar along the lines of what Stefan talked about. So the first thing that stood out for me is hearing Jürgen talk about developers as makers. This is almost a personal mission I feel like I've been on for like the last 14 years at Forrester, because so much of the time we talk about organizing application development, software development as an engineering process, as an industrial process. And I talk to folks that want to build software factories. And, you know, as a developer, I can't think of anything worse than wanting to spend my life, you know, kind of working in a factory using algorithmic processes. So when Jürgen talked about developers as makers, wholeheartedly agree with that. And so as makers, they're creatives. And so what our focus needs to be on is how we enable those developers to be creative and support them, as opposed to try to control them with too many processes and too many restrictive rules. And so giving developers the autonomy to work with whatever technology they know is one of the things that's important to creating that autonomy, whether it's through something like steampunk, which I thought was pretty cool. I don't know a lot about it, but I'd like to find out more, or whether it's by allowing them to connect to cloud native technologies like containers or even serverless. So self-organizing agile teams are part of that solution as well. And when you have high autonomy, autonomy plus applicable skills leads to increased development velocity. One example of how to do that is going back to the different types of developers and the types of tools that they use and their development approaches. And that's kind of why I really resonated with Jürgen's idea of going from full code to low code to no code, and giving developers different choices and really positioning that as a spectrum. I think that's the right way to look at it, because as an individual developer, I might choose to go full code for a system where I want to have a high level of control in an area that's really important to me, that's important to the business. And yet I might also choose to go low code or even no code for an area where velocity is important. If I'm building a contact tracking and tracing application, as an example, velocity really, really matters. If I'm trying to build a pickup service outside my brick and mortar store, velocity really matters. And we've seen lots of organizations turn to low code solutions as a way to very quickly deliver those apps during the pandemic. So giving developers the option to work at whatever level of abstraction matters to them based on what they're trying to do is critical to success for enterprises going forward. As an outsider, I also really liked the demonstrations of event-driven integration. I spend a lot of time covering cloud-native architecture and serverless in particular, and one of the hottest things in the serverless space right now is creating event-driven workloads. But there's a real problem with this right now, that a lot of times the events that these serverless platforms support are limited to what that individual cloud provider makes available. It's not necessarily the business events that our organizations run on. Furthermore, there's not a lot of really great tooling to put together an event taxonomy of all the different events that keep the business moving forward. I'm really excited to dig into this and see what kind of tools SAP provides to help developers put together that event-driven taxonomy and then integrate it both with SAP's technology stack as well as things like containers and Kubernetes and even Lambdas. The final thing then to me that kind of goes hand in hand with that event-driven integration capability is the one domain model. In some ways, if you can get data entities connected to events, then you've got the fundamental components to define how application workloads need to operate. So I'm very interested in finding out more about what it's going to take to set this up, to enable it, and I'm looking forward to learning more about it.
Wow, and there we have it again. The one domain model has come right back into it. Stefan, you were mentioning this as well. Why is this so important?
Mm-hmm. Well, integration has two angles, a technical and a semantic one. Enterprise messaging, APIs, or the integration pillar of the business technology platform help on the technical end. However, it does not make sense to integrate two applications which do not understand each other. And the one domain model helps as a translator and aligns data models from various applications. And this eases the standard integration as well, as it speeds up custom development. And establishing this consistent set of entities across SAP's portfolio is, let's say, a tough challenge. However, I do believe that this is doable because the one domain model is not a canonical data model, nor will it replace every single local data model. The term lingua franca describes it best. It sits between the applications and ensures a semantic, correct, and consistent data exchange between these applications. And therefore, I'm glad to see that with the workforce person, we now have the first vocabulary of our common language live. And I'm truly looking for more.
Stefan, it's kind of like grammar where, you know, the one domain model has the nouns and the events hopefully have the verbs. You put them together and you can talk to each other, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I've always had a focus in my world around terminology. You can't move forward if you don't know the right ones. So definitely understand there. But to switch things up just a little bit away from the specific technologies, I do have here, I'd love to go into learning. Jürgen touched on this quite a bit in different aspects. So Stefan, from a DSAG perspective, where do you see learning? I mean, how is this playing a role?
Mm-hmm. As innovation cycles speed up, the half-life of knowledge shortens continuously. And there is this famous quote of William Deming, which I used repeatedly. Learning is not compulsory, neither is survival. We are responsible for our own education. And it was never easier to get access to relevant material. And let me make 3 examples. So first, online training. SAP did a lot in that space. For example, you can find incredibly interesting learning journeys on help.com, which correspond to the earlier mentioned persona approach. They guide you and help you finding the tailored content for your role, or take the Tacket edition of the Learning Hub. Second, free tier will help getting our hands dirty. Really building stuff and trying things out is the most effective way to learn and to grow. And thirdly, exchange. I mean, developer communities and user groups such as ASAC, DSAG, and others are valuable sources for new contacts, to share your own experiences, to get inspired by others, and to learn from their failures as well. So finally, I encourage everybody here at TechEd to use the great opportunities throughout this virtual conference for learning and for building up knowledge.
I could not agree more. TechEd is that first starting point right now as we started today, so that's fantastic. But let's swing over to the other side of the pond. Jeff, from an ASUG perspective, what about you guys? I mean, you guys do a lot with learning already. How is this moving forward for you guys?
You know, well, Craig, the first thing that we have is our ASUG University offering out there, which is in addition to, all of the other amazing SAP offerings that Stefan talked about just a few moments ago. So from our perspective, we've really been focused over the last few years on end user enablement and making sure that the people using the SAP products every day understand how best to get value from them. It comes back to the citizen developer. Comes back to the citizen developer kind of example as well, that, we really want to see everyone get as much advantage and take as much opportunity out of all of this great SAP technology as they can. So, coupled with great technical education, which is what we're here to learn about over these next few days. And then as well as saying, how do we really put this power in the hands of our end users to make sure that they who use these tools each and every day, how do they get the most power and advantage? And, Jeff's earlier comments about integration and the comments about, the one domain model all come together really well to say we have a lot of opportunity to learn about how all these things work. And then how do we put them to better use as we enter 2021 and think through where can we go to bring value to our enterprises, our organizations, our employers.
All right. And back to you, Jeffrey, from an outside perspective, I mean, you kind of sit outside of our typical environment where we're all used to. Is there anything that stood out to you?
Well, first of all, just to pile on the learning point, there's nothing like an extended free tier to enable developers to have the time to learn 100%. In the evening. And one of the things that I often tell organizations is 30 days is not enough. You could argue even 90 days is not enough. Here, maybe that's enough. But then if you want to shift developers from learning about technology to prototyping with technology, that's where the free tier is going to become really important. Because if you allow them to prove value, then SAP will realize value as the developers prove it out. So I'll go back and second Stefan's vote there. To me, I had to say probably the coolest thing that I liked in the in Jürgen's presentation was the integration example around different data stores, one from SAP and one from S3, because this is the problem that I find our clients running into all day long. Modernizing data-intensive workloads is one of the most challenging aspects of modernizing applications right now and taking them into the cloud-native world. Developers need direction on how to do that, how to refactor not just the logic tier, but the data tier as well. It's great to have auto-scaling functions or pods of containers filled with microservices, but if those things overwhelm the number of connections available to them in the database connection pools from the relational databases, then these applications don't scale well. And so devs look at that and they say, okay, well, what advice do I get? I get put a database under each microservice. And that doesn't seem right either, because now I'm going from this big, large relational database that's supporting my transactions into lots of little databases that are all underneath these services. How's that going to work? How's that going to scale when I have hundreds or thousands of microservices? Linked data stores just aren't an option. So data fabrics or virtual data layers seem to be one of the things that organizations are looking for to help solve this problem. And that kind of looked like what I saw in Jürgen's keynote. Now, I did have one challenge with it, was that the example that was provided was around analytic data, and that's great, but I also want to see what the strategy moving forward is for transactional data. Taking transactional data into the cloud native world is going to be critical. And so I'd like to see more guidance from SAP as to how developers can do that in a way that's going to work on top of container-based technology. I had to tell you that I was doing a little bit of a search while Jürgen was speaking on, well, what sessions am I going to go to find out more about this? And I picked out two in particular. Dev 261, which is tomorrow at 8:30 Eastern Time, building cloud-native extensions for SAP solutions based on Kubernetes. And then right after that is another panel, Dev 392, which is an expert Q&A on both Kima and on Gardener. And so as somebody that's looking to figure out how to fit SAP into the larger cloud-native world, they feel like they're right on point with what I need for my application development clients.
Oh, fantastic. I just jotted those down, Dev 261 and Dev 392. And the Kima is a very interesting topic. Absolutely. Very cool. So, Anne, coming over to you, as an SAP mentor and a longtime member of the SAP community, former Adobe evangelist and everything, there has been so many topics thrown around. You and I have had conversations over the years about everything from cloud native to developer topics to ABAP to steampunk. You even showed steampunk in a keynote a couple of years ago. I would just love to get a sense of your thoughts on different topics like learning and all of this. So please do share your perspective from being inside of the inner workings and as a solution architect and developing on a regular basis.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I wanted to say thank you for having me. I'm calling in from Copenhagen in Denmark, where we are again more or less shut down, hence the home office setup once again. I wanted to start with kind of riffing off the learning theme that the others also mentioned. I am, of course, also very happy about the extension of the trial. And really looking forward to hearing more about the free tier in 2021, which I also think is a very important step, both in enabling current developers and learning more, but also to attract new developers to kind of our ecosystem. For me, the extension of the trial is important for several different reasons, but I think when I'm looking at continuous learning, it has never been more important than it is now. Tools and technologies change a lot faster and a much quicker pace than they did when I kind of joined the SAP ecosystem as an ABAP developers developing GUI screens. And I think the kind of the embracing the changes and having the ability and the willingness to constantly learn is super important in our kind of current ecosystem. So one of the places that I use a lot, or mostly for tutorials, kind of the last couple of years, have been the kind of the SAP Developer Center at developerssap.com. And I also use OpenSAP quite a lot. And also, like Stefan mentioned, the helpsap.com actually have a lot of good tutorials. One of the problems have been that because the trial was running for such a short time, you couldn't start a tutorial and pick it up again later. And then you would have to start over. So I think, like I said, extending the trial as a first step is really good because it will at least make sure that you don't have to start from scratch every time you kind of sit down to learn something new.
I guess the days are gone where we ended up getting a DVD. I actually still have this DVD with the NetWeaver, ABAP NetWeaver 610 system. And that was kind of like the trial that we would get. And now it's all cloud and we've extended. So absolutely, yeah, no, definitely. I definitely feel the point there. SAP, the entire SAP feels it.
Great. And I mean, the Tech Ed Learning Hub edition is like a great supplement to the online curriculum, which I'm super excited about digging into. And I also really like that the Tech Ed edition has the guided learning journeys that we kind of already know from past Tech Eds. and that I'm able to kind of use the same, dive into the tutorials the same way that I'm used to from the physical tech eds. So and that's, I feel like one advantage of having a virtual tech ed this year is that more than perhaps in the past, it will be the starting point of like a longer learning journey for 2021, instead of being like a one-stop that I cannot take things out of at the same level. Then, of course, the second thing that resonated for me from the keynote is, of course, the mentioning of steampunk, and that we can now say steampunk, and it's no longer just ABAP Cloud. So I'm really happy to see the progress it makes. And extensibility is probably one of the areas of cloud platform that I use the most. Last year, this is also a topic that has been mentioned, but the one domain model was really one of the biggest things for me last year, like already from Sapphire, when we talked about kind of the end-to-end processes and having that domain model sitting on top, not only from an integration perspective, but from my side more as a developer, as it will ease development on top of all these different SAP systems. And there was one product last year at TechEd that excited me, and that was SAP Graph, which is basically the API on top of the one domain model. It was now not mentioned in this keynote, but there are a couple of sessions that I'm really looking forward to. So I can check it out some more.
All right.
And see if anything has changed.
Very cool. I am getting a note or message in my ear from the production team. It sounds like we are just about out of time. So I wanted to say thank you very much to all of you for taking the time. I know it's difficult pulling things like this together, and all of you dialing in from different parts of the world. Just thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks for having us.